Tonight, tens of thousands march to say enough is enough. Protesters take to the streets demanding an end to sexism and gendered violence.
We are here because it's unfathomable that we are still having to fight this same stale, tired fight.
And in Sydney and across the state, people of all ages join the fight for change. Good evening, I'm Karina Carvalho. This is ABC News. Testing shows Sydney's latest COVID-19 case has the more infectious UK strain. Security forces opened fire on protesters in Myanmar, killing dozens. And the show must go on a year after COVID closures. Opera is back on the harbour. The voices of a few became the roar of many today. Thousands of Australians have turned out at rallies across the country calling for an end to sexism and violence against women. From Sydney to Alice Springs and Adelaide to Brisbane, women marched for justice in a movement sparked by the toxic culture in federal parliament. Two young women who brought the debate to a national reckoning have given powerful speeches. Former Liberal staffer Brittany Higgins in Canberra and Australian of the Year Grace Tame in Hobart. The Prime Minister did not attend and has been criticised for some of his language in responding to the rallies. From Canberra, political reporter Jade McMillan begins our coverage.
The voices of many.
No more! Enough is enough!
Inspired by the actions of a few. Former Liberal staffer Brittany Higgins returning to the building where she alleges she was raped by a male colleague in 2019.
My story was on the front page for the sole reason that it is a painful reminder to women that if it can happen in Parliament House, it can truly happen anywhere.
1 month after Miss Higgins made her allegation publicly, she used her platform to call for meaningful change.
This isn't a political problem. This is a human problem.
Thousands marching across the country, demanding action to end violence against women and the sexism and misogyny that enables it. And from the Australian of the Year, a hope that others will speak out.
Evil thrives in silence. Behaviour unspoken, behaviour ignored, is behaviour endorsed.
In the nation's capital, politicians from across the parliament were there to listen. The Prime Minister a notable absence. Organisers rejecting an offer for a private meeting in Scott Morrison's office.
I've driven for hours and he can't even be bothered.
This is a vibrant Liberal democracy, Mr Speaker. Not far from here, such marches, even now, are being met with bullets. But not here in this country, Mr Speaker. Not here in this country.
Not so much a tin air as a wall of concrete.
Labor facing its own reckoning about workplace culture, even as it tried to highlight its family-friendly credentials. A Facebook page accessible by some 1,200 current and former female Labor staffers detailing their own allegations of sexual abuse, harassment and misogyny from their male colleagues, some of whom, they say, still work in Parliament.
I haven't seen any allegations against any specific individuals.
Two individuals on the government side missing from Parliament, but still the focus.
How can the Prime Minister maintain confidence in the Defence Minister?
Why won't the Prime Minister establish an independent inquiry into the sexual assault allegations against his Attorney-General?
Christian Porter today announcing he's launching defamation action against the ABC and journalist Louise Milligan over an article reporting a historical allegation of rape which he's strenuously denied. A statement from lawyers representing Mr Porter saying he will have and will exercise the opportunity to give evidence denying these false allegations on oath.
That matter can be rightly addressed through our courts where it should be.
Christian Porter isn't expected back at work until the end of this month, meaning he won't face questions in Parliament until May. But as today demonstrated, the Prime Minister is likely to come under increasing pressure, not just about the workplace culture here, but about broader calls for change from women fed up with the status quo. Jade McMillan, ABC News, Canberra.
The momentum has been just as strong in New South Wales. Rallies were held across the state, with thousands taking to Sydney streets demanding change. Cecilia Connell reports.
I am strong.
Their roar was heard throughout the streets of Sydney. Thousands gathered at Town Hall, calling for an end to violence against women.
I think finally women in Australia have had enough. We've had enough.
When they did the rule of law, they didn't have women's voices. Now they do.
Women are being murdered at the rate of one a week. It's just not acceptable.
It's a challenge taken up by both sexes, including the lawyer who represented the woman at the centre of the Christian Porter allegations.
We need quite fundamental, deep reform to a lot of different parts of the system. It's not an easy fix.
I don't want to be the wrong type of male. I want to be the right type of male.
It was a difficult day for many.
As a 55-year-old woman, I carry 50 years of shame and humiliation in my heart. I'm angry. I'm angry.
There are mixed emotions here in the crowd outside New South Wales Parliament House, from anger and frustration to hope for meaningful change. Similar rallies were held in regional New South Wales. Around 300 people braved the rain in Lismore, while others turned out in Wollongong and Newcastle. Back in Sydney, exemptions to the COVID-19 public health order meant as many as 10,000 people were able to march.
I want to live in a world where women can come out and feel safe to tell their stories.
A standout sentiment on a day that will go down in history. Cecilia Connell, ABC News, Sydney.
More coronavirus restrictions are still set to be eased on Wednesday, despite a Sydney security guard contracting COVID-19. The man picked up the more infectious UK strain while working at a quarantine hotel. So far, there's been no more spread, and the Premier is urging other state leaders to stay calm and keep the borders open. Here's state political reporter Ashley Raper.
A single infection had the state on alert.
We're relieved to say this morning that there aren't any further cases of community transmission.
But the news isn't all good. The security guard has been infected with the UK strain and has been out in the community asymptomatic and infectious.
Obviously we are concerned, but I'm also confident that the community will respond.
Authorities believe he was infected on March the 6th while working at the Sofitel Wentworth in the CBD. A return traveller was there with COVID and the guard was stationed on the same floor. Genome sequencing shows their strains match, but they don't appear to have had any contact.
At the moment there is not a clear and obvious breach that explains it.
As a result, all other return travellers on that floor have had their quarantine extended. The guard had been vaccinated, but only with his first dose of Pfizer.
We can't be absolutely certain that people can't be infected with when they're in the vaccine, but what we would suspect is that they may be less likely to pass it on because their viral load might be lower.
The government has hit its vaccine target. More than 35,000 workers have received their first dose of Pfizer in 3 weeks. 2,000 people have also received the AstraZeneca vaccine since last Wednesday, and 45,000 new people will be vaccinated over the next 3 weeks. That includes workers in priority groups in regional areas. More of the state's vaccination hubs opened today.
What was amazing about having Dr Gosh is he was the first doctor to treat our first COVID patient, and it was really special that Dr Gosh got the first vaccination.
It's good for our frontline healthcare workers to get the vaccines close to home.
For now, more restrictions are still set to be eased on Wednesday. And while other states are monitoring developments here, the Premier is urging them not to overreact and keep the borders open. Ashley Raper, ABC News, Sydney.
Labor's Jodie McKay has hit out at certain union leaders as pressure increases on her leadership. Polling has been leaked showing Labor would record its worst primary vote in 120 years if an election was held now. The polling was commissioned by two major unions.
Their intention was to coward hit me from behind so that I will fall to the mat and just give up. But I've seen this out of the playbook of Eddie Obeid and Joe Tripodi, and I am not going to stay on the mat.
Jodie McKay insists she still enjoys the support of the Labor Party room. Activists in Myanmar say about 50 people have been killed by soldiers and police in just one day and dozens more injured. Protesters have vowed to keep up their fight despite the ruling junta declaring martial law in parts of the country's biggest city, Yangon. A warning, this report by Southeast Asia correspondent Zoe Ford contains some distressing images.
With the highest daily death toll and dozens of protesters hurt, it was Myanmar's bloodiest day since the coup. This woman wailed for her husband after he was shot in Yangon. Despair like this is all too common in Myanmar now. Another 50 families felt it over the past 24 hours, with their loved ones also killed. In Yangon, where there was the highest number of casualties, police say they had no choice but to shoot because arsonists targeted factories and a fertiliser plant. All were financed by China.
There's a lot of anger among normal people of what they see is Chinese support for the military. And they fear, I think, as well, that the military will be able to rely on China's continued support, perhaps for years, if there's not a resolution to the crisis.
Deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi was due in court via video link again today, but it was postponed due to technical issues. She remains under house arrest, powerless to help as her country is enveloped in chaos.
We have to fight for our future. I don't accept a military coup.
Some police have questioned their role in all this and fled to India.
I cannot shoot the people and beat the people who do not commit a crime. They are only peaceful protesters.
A view not shared by the wider force. With videos like this one from Mandalay showing relentless fire from soldiers who show no sign of backing down. Zoe Ford, ABC News.
Police are searching for a man after he tried to steal a woman's bag and then attacked her in Sydney's West. The 48-year-old woman was walking along a Lethbridge Park street last night when she was approached and stabbed in the stomach.
She sought assistance from a person that she did know, and that person drove her to Mount Druitt Hospital, where she was assessed and conveyed to Westmead Hospital, where she's been treated for non-life-threatening injuries.
Police are appealing for the man or anyone with information to come forward. A New South Wales woman who survived years of abuse and was kept as a slave has spoken out about how her former partner has been operating a sex cult. Speaking exclusively to tonight's Four Corners, Felicity Burke says she wants the man responsible brought to justice. The 40-year-old man was arrested in regional New South Wales and charged with slavery last week. A warning, this story contains descriptions of violence and sexual abuse. Elise Worthington reports.
A dark and violent past now dragged into the light. Felicity Burke endured unimaginable abuse at the hands of her former partner of 3 years.
There's numerous times that he's punched me in the face. It used to escalate quite quickly. And it used to escalate quickly when I had an opinion.
Her partner told her that he was her master and she was his slave. She was forced to sign a contract where a steel collar was caged and tattooed.
I know what he truly is, and he's a dangerous, dangerous man.
She was also made to write daily journals, hundreds of pages outlining her physical and sexual abuse and psychological manipulation.
When you're in that position, all your power is taken away from you, and it's really hard to get out.
A months-long investigation by Four Corners can reveal the man who abused Felicity Burke has been operating a sex cult in regional New South Wales. He was arrested late last week and charged with 3 slavery offences. 5 women came to support him at court and have previously said they're not manipulated into being with him.
For him to say that this is just some kind of mutually consensual arrangement is negating the facts. And if you look at what he's really doing, he's breaking them down systematically.
The AFP has made a plea to the public for help with the matter.
We are appealing for members of the Australian community to come forward, potential victims, witnesses, anybody that is impacted by human trafficking and slavery, and in particular with this matter, please come forward to the AFP.
The man is expected to apply for bail on Wednesday. Elise Worthington, ABC News, Sydney. Still to come this hour, meet some of the women demanding change.
This continues to happen and we won't stop until the government actually cares and actually does something about this.
It's time we actually address the problem.
Yes! Enough is enough!
Plus, why the Federal Minister for Women decided not to attend today's Women's March. That's coming up.
Victoria's Premier Daniel Andrews has been discharged from hospital after damaging his spine in a fall nearly a week ago. In a statement, Daniel Andrews says he narrowly avoided permanent damage to his spinal cord when he fell heavily on the front steps of a rental beach house. The 48-year-old fractured 5 ribs and has a compression fracture on his T7 vertebra. He says medical staff told him he's lucky to be in one piece. Dan Andrews will take at least 6 weeks' leave. There are fears Papua New Guinea is losing control of COVID-19. Australia has been helping with testing for the virus and the results are alarming. The country's Prime Minister says it could be as bad as 1 in 3 people infected. Queensland is scrambling to protect vulnerable communities in the Torres Strait, where some islands are just kilometres away from PNG. Papua New Guinea correspondent Natalie Whiting reports.
This gym is about to become a COVID-19 hospital. As cases surge in Papua New Guinea, there aren't enough beds for the patients.
We are possibly having an infection rate of about 1 person to 3 or 4 in our country.
The Prime Minister says a full lockdown would cripple the economy, but he's announced an isolation strategy instead.
Stay put where you are.
PNG has recorded just over 2,000 cases, but the low testing rate means there's probably many more. Queensland has been helping process samples, including confirming suspected positive cases.
Out of the 500 tests that our health authorities have done for Papua New Guinea, 250 have come back positive. So this is a real concern.
The surge in cases is cause for concern in the Torres Strait. Some islands are mere kilometres from the PNG mainland.
It's right on our doorstep and it is a real risk. And as you know, that's why we're getting our Torres Strait Islanders vaccinated as quickly as possible.
There's also a jump in cases among travellers flying into Queensland from PNG.
I hope that I'll be able to speak to the Prime Minister or the Prime Minister's office in the next 24 hours just to talk about our concerns there, have a look at the flights that are coming in.
It's thought infections will rise further in coming weeks, with tens of thousands of people gathering to farewell the country's first Prime Minister, Sir Michael Somare. Officials are appealing to Australia for help.
If they could send to us some vaccines at the very earliest.
Australia is helping pay for this new field hospital.
As the case numbers increase, there will be a need, potentially, for a greater assistance from around the region.
The PNG government says discussions are underway with Australia about it sending health workers here to assist. Natalie Whiting, ABC News, Port Moresby.
Drug manufacturers in poorer countries are calling on world leaders to push for patents on COVID-19 vaccines to be lifted. They say they're not benefiting from a deal struck by Australia, India, Japan and the US to provide an extra 1 billion doses for the Indo-Pacific region. Vaccine makers in the region say if they're allowed to help with production, the pandemic could end in a matter of months instead of years. South Asia correspondent James Oaten reports.
This drug maker, just a few hours from the Bangladesh capital, produces a lot of different vaccines. But the one it can't yet produce is the most in demand for COVID-19.
I think the world cannot wait so long to be vaccinated.
The manufacturer says it has plenty of spare capacity and it could produce between 600 to 800 million coronavirus vaccines a year if it got a licence.
Instead of waiting until 2023, we can make this vaccine available to our entire nation population within 2 to 3 months' time.
Like many developing nations, Bangladesh is a long way off its vaccination targets. It couldn't afford to pay top dollar to get in front of the queue. To help fill a vaccine shortage, the so-called Quad nations of Australia, the US, Japan and India will provide an extra 1 billion doses for the Indo-Pacific region.
It's not a very remarkably big chunk. It will boil down to which segment of the population will each country prioritise to protect.
The Quad will utilise India's huge vaccine manufacturing capabilities, challenging China's vaccine diplomacy.
What you're doing with all of this is you're providing an alternative when it comes to vaccines, that China is not the only game in town. And I think that is really the larger geopolitical message.
The World Health Organisation's COVAX program is also hoping this year to provide 2 billion doses to many low-income countries. But that amount is only enough to vaccinate around a fifth of the target population, meaning the gap between rich and poor won't be closing anytime soon. James Oaten, ABC News, Delhi.
Sydney's expanding metro system has hit another milestone with excavation of the new Barangaroo station complete. It's taken more than 2 years to remove 650,000 tonnes of dirt and rock. The next phase will employ 300 people to fit out the new station.
These types of contracts which are announced today are as much about recession busting as much as making sure New South Wales remains the #1 jurisdiction around the world when it comes to infrastructure.
The station is set to open in 2024. It's a case of better late than never, with opera on Sydney Harbour making a COVID comeback. The production of La Traviata was cancelled a year ago to the day because of the pandemic. Now the 80-strong cast is back and more inspired than ever. Kathleen Ferguson reports.
It's a special day for these dancers. They are taking to Sydney's famous floating opera stage for La Traviata after the pandemic forced the production to shut down 12 months to the day.
It's so exhilarating to be actually standing on the stage. I think there's so much buzz in the cast at the moment to be on the stage now.
It's not the first time the Parisian drama has been told on the harbour. This 2012 performance shows how impressive the 3.5-tonne chandelier looks, all lit up.
This will be the best show we've ever done because we've done this one before, so we know how to do it, we know what we need to do.
This production is one of many coming to Sydney, with hopes the reawakening of the arts sector will lure people back into Sydney's CBD.
We've also got Hamilton opening on the same weekend. We've got people back in our football stadiums. We've got people back in our restaurants.
This is a global statement. There's no other company in town who's doing undistanced operas at the moment, in the world.
As they say, the show must go on. Kathleen Ferguson, ABC News, Sydney.
To finance, though Australia's economy is slowly recovering, unemployment remains an issue, particularly for women. Here's Daniel Ziffer.
Our economic recovery continues, but the Reserve Bank Governor today injected a note of concern about our high unemployment rate. Short-term casuals have been hit hard, often the first to be let go. Unable to access the JobKeeper wage subsidy, they've been overwhelmingly female and in industries dominated by women. The news is no better at home. Before the pandemic, hours of paid work were fairly even across gender. But women spent over 2 hours more on caring responsibilities and housework per day than men. When COVID sent millions home from work, you'd expect that to smooth out. It actually got worse. These hours don't tally exactly because, as many work-from-homers know, a lot of care responsibilities occur in parallel to paid work. But it might spark some discussion as we go through figures that have a dollar attached to them. The Australian share market was flat today as investors flailed about a drop in the iron ore price and what that might mean for the future. That 3% drop is substantial. Then again, the price of ore has gone up about $100 a tonne in the last 2 years. Bitcoin continued its rocket rise, even though many people are unsure about what it's fundamentally worth. The blockchain technology that makes it all work might end up being the most valuable thing. And New Zealand's market continues to hover near record highs. Being an island has helped, economically, in the past year. And that's finance.
Matilda's captain Sam Kerr has helped her English club side Chelsea win consecutive Women's League Cups. Kerr was dominant, scoring a hat-trick in Chelsea's 6-0 win over Bristol City in the final of the competition. The striker wasted little time, netting twice in the first 10 minutes before adding a third just after half-time.
Kirby into Wrighton and back to Frank Kirby. It could be 5 here. Oh, that's so unselfish. Cup final hat-trick, Sam Kerr.
Kerr has now scored 16 goals for Chelsea this season. Cronulla coach John Morris isn't getting ahead of himself after his side beat St George Illawarra 32-18 last night. After falling behind early, the Dragons got to within 2 points before the Sharks scored 3 tries in 14 minutes to race away to victory. Morris says his side still needs to improve if it wants to compete with the top teams.
It's hard to judge round one performance. Takes a while to sort of get moving, and particularly if you've had new players into your team, like a lot of sides have, and new combinations. So I wouldn't make any judgments too early. But yeah, certainly those top sides, the way they finished last year, have certainly started well.
Cronulla centre Jesse Ramian is facing a 4-week suspension after he was charged with making a reckless high tackle. American singer Taylor Swift has won her 3rd Album of the Year at the Grammy Awards in a ceremony dominated by female artists. Swift's surprise album Folklore has made her the first woman to win the award 3 times. Also making history was Beyoncé, who became the most decorated female act of all time. New artist known as Her took out Song of the Year for her protest track I Can't Breathe, while Billie Eilish has joined the greats, winning her 2nd consecutive Record of the Year for Everything I Wanted. To the weather now, and there's more rain ahead for the state, Graham.
Yeah, there is, Karina. This is the expected rainfall totals over the next 4-day period. The thing is, it actually continues well into the following 4 days, and we are looking at some parts of the state could record over 100 millimetres over the coming 7-day period. In fact, continuing on the rainfall theme, the city has recorded 6 dry days and 9 wet days so far this month. Penrith has recorded 8 dry and 7 wet, and both locations have recorded around half the monthly average rainfall. Parts of the northern and central inland, also areas of the northwest, have already recorded average to above average rainfall this month, with only the southeast inland likely to miss out on further decent falls in the coming week. Totals from 10 to 30 millimetres were fairly widespread anywhere north of around Ballina to Lismore today. And from tomorrow, the state will come under the influence of a stalled weather pattern. We've got a high in the southern Tasman. That's causing a moist and unstable onshore wind flow. We've also got an inland trough, and this will enable the moisture and instability to spread inland at times through the week. And there's the possibility of some significant falls through some parts of the state. And Canberra should be dry until Thursday when showers become more widespread. It's also going to be a wet week for Brisbane, but sunny and warm to hot for Perth. Now, as that high continues to ridge up the coast, showers will develop in the far south coast, spreading north with that trough in Queensland, and that'll trigger some storms about the northwest. It's mostly cloudy but generally dry. We've got sunny spells in the north, showers developing in the lower Hunter around the evening and spreading north, and strong winds anywhere north of Yamba in the morning. Partly cloudy but mostly dry along the tablelands, overcast along the coast with patchy and light showers developing through the afternoon and evening, and southwest winds shifting southeast through the afternoon. Should be mostly dry and sunny with moderate easterly winds, although cloud increasing between about Walgett to Tibooburra and down to Cobar with some patchy thundery showers. Winds will tend easterly and moderate in strength on the waters in the evening. Our lows are going to range from 12 to 18. Our tops will reach 22 to 25, becoming cloudy with isolated showers at first. They'll tend more likely and more widespread through the afternoon. And then they're with us all the way through until at least the early part of next week with widespread decent falls.
Thanks very much, Graham. Lee Sales is here now with 7:30.